Conjunctive, Shabbat Shalom, Shana Tova. Let me start by saying that this was not an easy year to write a Drash for Rosh Hashanah. My process reminded me a lot of a Chelm story. The story begins with Yankala, the fishmonger, who decides to open up a new stall in the marketplace. And he paints a sign that says, "Fresh fish sold here daily." A friend comes walking by and sees his sign and says, "Yankala, why so many words on your sign? Surely you could say what you need to say with fewer words." The word fresh, for instance, we know you sell fresh fish. You don't need that word. The word daily, you're here every day. You don't need to tell us that. Even the word here, where else would we go to buy your fish? Your house? No, this is where you sell fish. So Yankel agreed and crossed out all these words. He only had one word left and it said fish. And his friend said, "Look, I have to be honest with you, Yankala. We smell your fish a block away. There's no question what it is you're selling. I don't even think you need the word fish." Yankala had to agree, and he crossed out all the words on his sign. And there he sat under a blank sign, conducting his business. Lo and behold, Yankala did very well. People came to him throughout the day to buy his fish. So much so that all the other merchants were talking amongst themselves, saying, "What is it that Yankala is doing that we're not doing?" And then they realized, it's his sign. So this was the day that all of the signs became blank in the Chelm marketplace. What are the words? More words could be crossed out than put on a paper for this year. However, there is a question that I want to start with. It's the question that we ask ourselves every Rosh Hashanah. In fact, it's the first question that comes up in the Torah when Adam and Eve eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They wake up in a new way. They have new information, new perspective about the world. But that quickly transforms into fear and into shame, and they hide. And God calls out to the two of them with the word ayeka. Where are you? Not interested in their physical location, but wondering where they have wandered to emotionally. Where are they in their lives? How did they get so lost so quickly? There's no question that this year has left all of us feeling a little lost, a little disoriented amongst the wheels of change and transformation that we are all in the midst of. We are all trying to figure out where our grounding is. What is our orientation? If there are things that we no longer can depend on, what is it that orients us in our lives? Our tradition was built for times like this. In fact, our history is filled with moments, with periods of great upheaval, great disturbance. You could say that the entire Jewish spiritual system is rooted in the notion of change, of movement, of transformation. There are countless practices that we have. And maybe you've had this experience as I have this past year, this past 6 months, that suddenly Judaism has a different voice, that the Torah has a different voice. Not a voice that is suddenly new, but a voice that we suddenly hear, that was encoded there the whole time. At Rosh Hashanah, we look towards how we begin How do we begin this year? How do we begin this moment in time? I look to the way in which our tradition guides us to begin a day. How do we begin a day in our tradition? When we wake up in completely new time. We all know the first words on a traditional Jew's mouth in the morning are the words of the Modeh Ani. And just as all prayer has a fractal component, I believe that these few words that we say in the morning are a reflection of not just prayer in general, but in particular Rosh Hashanah, what we do on Rosh Hashanah. The words begin, Modeh Ani lefanecha, I am grateful before you. Gratitude is a small trick that we play on the mind, because the mind is mostly interested in seeking out what is not working well, what needs fixing. The mind is so good at it, that's what it's designed to do, that we need to give the mind something to open up the door to our hearts, to open up the door to a connection with something deeper, with blessing, with prayer. We begin with gratitude. I am grateful before you. And even in that gratitude, the mind is relieved from all of its busyness to rest in blessing. Modeh Ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam. The word melech, we all know, means king. And for most of us, when we see that word translated, printed in front of us, it turns us off immediately. How could we think of the mystery of all existence in this word of king? The important thing is to realize that the word melech in Hebrew does not just mean a human king, but the letters mem, lamed, chaf, when you look at what each one of these letters mean, this word comes alive in a new way. It means from the source, guided into the palms of my hands. That is to say that in our tradition, the word melech means that there's a source of life, and that source of life comes into being as life around us and as us. And on Rosh Hashanah, one of the greatest goals, one of the greatest invitations is to reassign that awareness. Not that life is just simply happening, but there is a source of life. Certainly, we would like life to happen a certain way. And that is something that takes even more faith, that the way that life is unfolding, there is a source to that. Chai v'kayam, it is alive and present in my life, in this moment. Shehechazarta bi nishmati b'chemla, that has returned my soul to me in compassion. When this prayer was assigned to the morning, it was clearly thought that when we rise up in the morning, it's as if we are revived. It's as if our soul returns to our body after it having gone on its own journey. But we all know that at many moments in life, we lose touch with our soul. Where is our soul in what's happening? It is always returned to us. We can always come back. to that connection. And that is what we do on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is returning to the soul. By the time we get to Yom Kippur, we're not even concerned with the body anymore. It's only about the soul. And then the last two words, Rabbah emunatecha. Great is your faithfulness. It seems like an odd statement to make in the morning. It seems like we should declare our own faith. But here we are declaring God's faith, saying, great is your faithfulness. If you follow these two words to their source, you'll find them in the book of Lamentations, Echa, that we read on Tisha B'Av, that was read 7 weeks ago on Tisha B'Av. And these words are attributed to the prophet Jeremiah as he was watching the destruction of the temple. And they go as follows. I said that my strength and my hope had been destroyed. Recalling my pain and my restlessness made my heart ache, made my soul hollow. But hope will return to my heart. God's compassion has no end. God's kindness does not cease. They renew the world each morning. Great is your faith in us. I find it so powerful that the rabbis encoded within this first phrase that we say in the morning a connection to the point of our tradition that is an acknowledgement of the greatest destruction and brokenness in the world. And I believe that when the rabbis did this, they did that to say, no matter where you are, no matter where you wake up, no matter what time in history it is, no matter what the events are, we've got you. We know that even in the midst of great upheaval, great disturbance, that not only can we be grateful, but that we can see that God has faith that this will transform. Many people know that Tisha B'Av is the day of destruction, but what is often left out is the idea that on the afternoon of Tisha B'Av is when the Mashiach is born. After this day of mourning, when the sun is about to go down, in our tradition, the notion that the deepest potential for redemption, for healing, for wholeness, rises up out of that experience. Our tradition holds that there is no destruction that doesn't also have within it great potential for redemption. In fact, Rosh Hashanah doesn't begin today. It doesn't begin at the beginning of Elul a month ago, but it actually begins on Tisha B'Av. And we hold this teaching, we hold this notion up until this moment in time, this faith that no matter what we've seen, no matter what we will see, that there's redemption there. As we stand here at the gates of this new year, what is it that we are bringing with us into the year? How do we fortify ourselves? Interestingly enough, at every point of renewal and transformation in our tradition, the question is not what do we bring with us? The question is what do we leave behind? What do we shed? What do we drop? There's a story about a student who visits his Rebbe, with so many questions that he can barely wait to ask them. He knocks on the Rebbe's door. The Rebbe sees he's trembling with thought. And the Rebbe says, first we'll have tea. And he sits him down, starts to pour the tea. And soon the tea starts overflowing the cup into the saucer. And the student is watching, and suddenly the tea is overflowing the saucer. The student says, Rebbe, what are you doing? The Rebbe says, there's no more room in this cup for tea. And the student says, of course there's not, I can see. And the Rebbe says, there's no more room in you. You've come here too filled up. You need to make space if you want something to come through, something to come fill you. This reminds me also of one of the last times I saw Reb Zalman. I was taking a road trip across the country, and I knew I would be passing through Boulder, so I called Zalman and I asked if he could meet with me. And he said, come daven with me in the morning, and then we'll have some time. So I went to this little shtibala, I think it might have been the Hillel house in Boulder, and we davened. And after davening, he said, let's go get some breakfast. And we went to a restaurant where there was a line up to the counter where you order. And we stood in line, and here I was for the first time standing with Zalman. And I had so much to talk about. I didn't even know where to start. And I was thinking, okay, here we are. What am I going to say? And I'll never forget, there was a young child, a toddler, a little ways up in the line, a little girl. And Zalman and this little girl locked eyes. And suddenly they started smiling. And before long, they started laughing. And just with their eyes, they started playing with each other. And this whole playful act started to unfold in laughter, in hiding, and in laughter. And it was lovely, but I was getting impatient. I thought, here I am. I drove across the country, and I want to talk to Reb Zalman, and it seems as if I'm not even here. The only thing that matters is this young child. And when I look back on that experience, that moment, I can't actually remember anything of our conversation that day. Practically nothing. What I do remember is that moment of Reb Zalman not ignoring me, but saying to me, what you have to say, all of the thoughts, questions, concerns that are on your mind, they're not life in this moment. And he showed me what life was in that moment. It was love, it was joy, it was connection. That was life. The rest was my lesson. We come to this Rosh Hashanah with all of our questions, with all of our residue from everything that has happened and everything that is yet to happen. Where are we? I want to bless you, and me too, that part of our work this Rosh Hashanah is to empty our signs, to start crossing things off, to become empty, to become available, to become renewed. So whatever comes before us in the days, the months, the weeks to follow, that we can say, Hineni, I am here. Shana Tova, V'tikatevu. May we have a good year, and may our lives be worthy of being written about, being inscribed in the book of life. Amen.